Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Just give me a sec. Inviting some people. Just gonna wait for them to arrive. Hello, hello. Kasaye. Mesal Desta. Adisu, hello. Fabu, why don't you hop on? We can have multiple people now, I'm pretty sure. Terhas, hello. Hello, Hana. Sion. Hi.
Can you see me?
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. I'm trying to get Uncle in here.
I'm worried it's not gonna work if I'm here and he's here.
Is he in the thing though?
I don't know. I sent it to him.
All right. Well, we'll wait a bit. We'll see what happens.
He knows.
He knows?
Yes. He confirmed.
He confirmed? Oh, okay.
Let
Alrighty.
me I had to, I have to make sure with everybody everything is gonna be good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna pin your okay, Danny, tell them what's going on today.
Oh, okay. I guess there's enough people here now to let people know what we're talking about. Last episode was the fall of the Aksumite Empire and sort of the rise of the Zagwe dynasty. Now we're going to be talking about the rise of the Dynasty. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll be talking about the effects it has on Tigray. So we're going to be going mostly like maybe like 13th, 14th, 15th century. So that's like late 1200s, 1300s, 1400s. We might go into the 1500s. We'll see. Hopefully we can get Uncle here.
Okay.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pin this.
Oh, he's here. Okay. Pin the comment. Comment pinned.
Okay, now I'll send to everybody.
Okay, and I'm gonna try and bring up Uncle everybody. Okay. Uncle, let us know in the comments if it's working or if it's not working, because I saw a thing where you can have multiple people up, so I'm hoping that works this time.
Yeah, you guys don't really need me, so
Mm-hmm.
if it's not working,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
We can
out.
just get Uncle. Yeah, yeah. You're the disposable one, Fabu.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, it worked! Whoa!
We're so high tech now.
I know, it's the dream team.
Hey, what's
Hi.
going on? What's going on?
What's up, Uncle Zahawe?
Come here home.
It's a book.
How did you get it blurry? Like this is a new a new. Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, I
I'm
I
see.
Malay
got
Nazal
you.
ako.
Okay. All right. So, okay, guys, no introduction needed. You already know Memher Danny, Memher Uncle, the historians, Canada's finest, here to teach you guys today about How do you pronounce it? Shewan?
Shewan Dynasty.
Shewan Dynasty. All right.
Okay, so yeah, and just so
Oh,
everybody knows, if you have, sorry, is there something you want to say, Fabu?
yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know, guys. Make sure you put your comments, sorry, your questions in the question box, okay? I will catch the questions in the comments. That's why I'm here. But just make my life easier and put the questions in the question box. Nothing is off the table. Whatever you guys want to talk about, they're here to answer.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I guess we'll just get started. So, like, okay, Uncle, can you give us a little, like, so after the fall of the Zagwe dynasty, we see Amdet Zion. Amdet Zion, or no, sorry, Yakuno Amlak
Yes,
is
you
the
can
first
unlock.
Showan emperor. So,
Mm.
what can you tell us about that time period? How did Yakuno Amlak get into that position?
Okay, so ultimately, what we do understand is that there was an issue with the Egyptian church,
Hmm.
and they refused to send an awun, meaning a metropolitan or a bishop, even under the Zagwe dynasty. So a lot of time, we went without having bishops. Without having bishops, you can't have priests or deacons to serve in the church. So at the time of a more popular saint, Auna Taklahamanot, um, he came out saying that the great grandchild of the last Aksumite emperors is here, who was a clothes washer at the monastery of, I think, Iyasus Ma'a, found in present-day Wallo. He was a monk by the name of Tesfa Yesus. And Tesfa Yesus was obviously, like as I mentioned, had the claim that he was a great grandchild. And the restoration of the Aksumite emperors will happen with Tesfa Yesus. So Tesfayosus goes to Aksum. There's this whole kind of drama going on, or who are you? And I'm the son of the Aksumites, and what's your lineage? And then they go through this almost play of sorts, and he passes this test of proving himself to be the descendant of the Aksumites, and is crowned Yukun Amlak. So
Okay.
the narrative that this is a restoration of the Solomonic emperors, the bloodline of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. As mentioned before, there was already this narrative that the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon had a child in many languages in many areas, be it Syria, Egypt, and whatnot.
Hmm.
So, kind of taking this narrative and applying it to himself is what we see with Yukon Amlak. But
Okay.
you can definitely bring it up.
So one question I have is, so you said the Egyptians refused to send a metropolitan or a patriarch for Ethiopia.
Yeah.
So the two questions. Can you explain why that was a thing? Why was the leader of our church sent from Egypt? And then also, can you explain why they were not sending one at that time?
Okay, so I guess this goes back all the way to Saint Athanasius, who was a doctor of the church. He was a
Hmm.
patriarch of Egypt. He's famous for the founding of the New Testament canon. So when we say the New Testament, 27 books, meaning four Gospels, the epistles, and Johannes or Revelations, uh, it's it goes back to Saint Athanasius. And the reason why this is important is because when Frumentius, this is one of the shipwrecked Syrians that came at the time of Izana Saizana or Abraha Atzaha, we see that he goes to Egypt, and he himself is nominated to be the metropolitan. So he comes back as Kasate Ibrahim Awan Salama. Now, the excuse that they gave was, who knows the Ethiopians better than you? So they ordained him first the metropolitan. Now, we don't exactly have a full schematic list of bishops that came to serve in Ethiopia. There is rumor, or there is a thought that that there were Ethiopian bishops at the time,
Hmm.
but we don't know. So what we do know, though, is that there was consistently a group of people sent from Ethiopia to Egypt, and they would go bearing gifts like gold, incense, so on and so forth, and we would receive an album or a metropolitan. Um, in the beginning, it's understandable. You know, we don't really have monasteries at that level, and many other things as well. But through time and through whatever issues that may have been, for example, the Egypt being controlled by certain groups of people, I don't want to exactly say who, but you know, and so on and so forth. There was troubling relations between the two countries, especially like later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then there was an issue of Syrians coming to Ethiopia. So many Syrians from the Syrian Orthodox Church were coming to Ethiopia, serving the emperors and whatnot. The Egyptians didn't like that. But ultimately, when the Zagwe took over, the Egyptian Church position was that we don't recognize anybody outside of the Aksumite line. If you're not from that line, we don't know who you are. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't have relations with you, kind of thing. So there was a refusal for many centuries, essentially. There was times where they would passively send somebody, and also a lot of times Syrians were coming in during the Zagwe dynasty. We even see that even at the time of Yukon Amlak, where there are Syrian emissaries, monks, so on and so forth. Right, many of our saints are in fact Syrian.
Mm-hmm.
Another evidence of this is that the Ethiopian Church, although is liturgically Alexandrian, meaning Egyptian, is very much influenced by Syrian theology and Syrian spirituality. So as both groups are Semitic, you see a Semitic way of thinking. So for example, typology, kind of connecting both Old Testament and New Testament ideas and
Mm-hmm.
presenting them in a way in a certain way is a very Semitic approach. We see Saint Ephraim the Syrian doing this, and then we also see Saint Yared doing this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so a Syrian link is definitely there. The nine saints all obviously being Syrian as well. So the Egyptians didn't like this, of course. So that probably contributed to why they didn't send anyone. But again, it's still a speculation.
Okay, so there seems to be an interesting link between the church and the legitimacy of the monarchy, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So the monarchy has to be legitimized by the church. So
Yes,
that's why we
exactly.
see the relationship with Yukuno Amlak and that monk you were speaking about. And
Yes,
like you said, there was
yes.
like a play because he needs to be legitimate in the eyes of the church before
Mhm.
he can become the ruler of Ethiopia at that time, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So are you familiar with um, Ingida Igzi?
Ingrid, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I
Okay, can
believe
you?
he was the. If I, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was Akabe Tsantan or he was
Yeah,
Tigray
you
Mukwanlan. Akabe Tsantan.
no. Yeah,
Okay.
Akabetz
Okay.
Ensign,
Yeah.
and I think I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. There was another Aksumite title he held, Hazgwa. I don't
Okay.
know.
Yes. Yeah.
Wait. What's up, Abian? Whatever you just
Okay,
said. I know if I people are confused.
okay. So at the during Yakuno Amlak's time, so this is the 1300s after the Shewan Dynasty comes into power. The
Mm-hmm.
governor of Enderta was Ingida
Yes.
Igzi, right?
Ingrid, yeah.
And he was the most powerful northern ruler at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And his son succeeded him, and his son was named Tesfana Igzi,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. Exactly.
And like Uncle was telling us, he held the titles of Hasgwa. I don't know what Hasgwa means. And then how did you pronounce the other one? Aka.
Um, Akabe Tsantan.
Okay. And
So
that means keeper of the fly whisks,
yes, exactly.
which is an ancient Aksumite title.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we see at that time with him in him just holding those titles is him threatening the Shewan dynasty. So I'm trying to condense here. So as early as 1305, Tesfan Igzi refers to Enderta as his kingdom, and his son and successor, I don't know how to pronounce this, I don't know if you do, Uncle, Ya Bika.
Yaabikegzi. Yeah.
Okay,
Yaabikegzi. Yeah.
there you go. And in his land grant, he doesn't even mention the emperor, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that's him saying like, I'm my own dude, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually he rebels. So this is something a lot of people don't know. He rebelled. This is in the 1300s. This is roughly 1320-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And he unsuccessfully invited the governor of Tembien to join him, but he
Yes.
refused. And we
Mm-hmm.
see the emperor at that time was Amditseon. This is a different emperor.
Mm-hmm.
He responds swiftly. He kills the governor
Wait.
Yes.
Why did
Yeah.
the Tembian governor refuse?
I don't know, Uncle. Do you know?
Yeah,
I couldn't find anything.
we don't exactly see much, but it is important to understand that at this time there's no real provincial schematic map kind of thing. So there's no like Tigray as we know it today, for example.
Hmm.
There were these aurajas or these like we heard kingdoms essentially or city states as they always were prior to a certain time. So Endata was on its own, Temben was on its own, and they all had this Sium, which nowadays
Hmm.
would be called Shum. So Shum Tambien or Sium Tambien, Sium Endata, Sium Agame would rule their city states.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we even see like a falling away from Aksum as being the capital of the Aksumite Empire, moving much farther east um, at an earlier period. So these city states kind of formed, or they probably were already there. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, continue.
No, yeah. Good clarification. So yeah, like you said, there was no unity at the time, so that's why that guy didn't help. Um, so eventually he gets killed, and Amdatzion takes the titles of, the governor of Enderta, and he sort of divides them and awards them to different people, and people who weren't considered lowly of lowly origin, and they were very unpopular. They were described as men who were not born from Adam and Eve, and who were called Halistiotat. Do you know? Do,
Oh my goodness. I
uh,
don't remember actually.
it's a term literally meaning bastard of
Yeah,
mixed or
yeah, yeah.
low oranges. Okay,
Yeah.
Wait, bastard of what?
Misorgy.
bastard of mixed or low origins.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's an Aksumite is term or if it's a
Say
Tigrinya
it again.
term.
How would you spell it?
It's Halestiyotat. Halistiotat.
Halistiotat.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Halistiotat. Halistiotat. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we also see Andetsión sends essentially a group of troops to form a camp in Enderta to keep the area from rebelling again and make sure that they're squarely under his rule. And I'm pretty sure Andetsión's wife was a woman from what is now Tigray, a Tigrinya-speaking person,
Yes.
to
Yes.
legitimize his rule, because you have to remember this dynasty is very, very new, and they're trying to make sure that they are, um, you know, their rule is stable, and it's the people see it as being an integral part of the empire. Um, okay, so now we're gonna like move on. Is there anything you want to say? Any uncle? Do you have any comments? Anything you want to add?
Yeah. There was also a few situations going on at the time of Ambetsion.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly that of the Tigray fighting with the Tigray Makonnen and replacing a lot of the traditional rulers, as you mentioned earlier. So the two major ones would be one in Mbasaneti, found in present-day Arwa Auraja, and then the other one being the Bahar Nagasi, which is in present-day
Mm-hmm.
Sarai in Eritrea, in Dawarawa. So the traditional rulers were essentially killed and replaced. I don't know, not only them, but throughout the areas to kind
Mm-hmm.
of formalize the control or what's the word? I guess holding of this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So another important person at this time, and I'm very interested for you to explain to us about this gentleman, is a guy named, I don't know how to pronounce this properly. I know you're going to know how to say his name, though.
Okay,
Eostatetos?
Auna Eosatios.
Okay. So,
Sorry, no worries.
Febu, come on, man.
I can't say that.
Okay, it's not just me then?
I
No,
was.
Uh,
it's Greek, by the way. It's a Giz formation of a Greek original name. So don't
oh,
worry.
okay. Okay.
I don't feel
It's
that
not
bad.
native to us.
So what can you tell us about this man and why he's important? Yeah, just why he's important.
Okay, so he was a monk. Auna Eosatios was a monk from present-day Enderta, from a place called Tzara.
Mhm.
Uh, the major importance of this monk is that he was a part of he's the founder of this movement, which was basically pushing like the maintaining of the Saturday Sabbath. So in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church and obviously with the Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church, they they were purporting this maintaining of both Sabbath, Saturday and Sunday. So your parents may tell you guys, when they were children, you would do all the work on Friday, and Saturday and Sunday would be no work. So in the south, in areas like Shoa, Sunday worship, I mean Sunday Sabbath was kept. Saturday was like a regular day. But the Eustatians refused to accept such a behavior, and they maintained this Saturday Sabbath. And it went as far as going to the court of Egypt. I mean, the Church of Egypt. And he defended his position there. I think the emperor at the time was, if I'm not mistaken, Zara'iqot. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he lived from 1273 to 1352. So yeah, he was around for a few emperors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's also famous for monasteries, like, or being the godfather or the spiritual leader to monasteries such as Debre Bizan with Aune Philippos, Aune Absadi. Like a lot of the monasteries that are found in Eritrea, specifically in Saraye or Zoa, are attributed either to him or by the students of him. So yeah, like the north, say places like Gondar, Tigray, and Eritrea would maintain the Saturday Sabbath, but then in other places like Shoa, Gojam, or Wollo, they may not have. But yeah, that was the main controversy with Aune Eustathius.
Okay, so yeah, we see that controversy within the church where it's the Sabbath. He's saying the Sabbath should also be celebrated on Saturday because that's the original one from the Old Testament, but
Yes.
also on Sunday because that's the day Jesus died, right?
Yes, exactly.
So then, now we go on to a very, very interesting man, Abba Estefanos.
Very
So,
controversial.
okay, so tell us about this man, why he's controversial. This is all the way up to, I think, the 15th century, but 1400s, so we're skipping about 100 years. This is because this period of time is almost like a dark age for Tigray.
Mm-hmm.
There's not that much info. Most of the info is about the Shewan Dynasty, so it's hard to find info in the 13th, 14th, 15th centuries. Before we move on to Abba Estefanos, is there anything you want to talk about in the 1300s before we move on?
No, I mean, like we pretty much touched on the main points.
Okay.
So as you mentioned, there was this validation of the Solomonic dynasty within the country, internally and externally. We also see controversies in the church, like for example, starting with the Saturday Sabbath with Aune Eustathios, and now we can kind of like delve into Aune Stephanos.
Okay, so tell us about him. Why is he controversial? What did he believe? What was he doing?
Okay, so the issue with Aune Estefanos, it's still kind of hotly debated, actually.
Oh,
Even within
really?
the church today, yeah.
This isn't settled?
Yeah, no, because you have a movement of clergy and Likawan, meaning scholars of the church, who are supportive of him. In fact, he's a saint. And then you also have another group that kind of considers him a heretic or a Menaphet. So certain groups, like even like a lot of the Tahaddiso or Ethiopian Protestants, will even go as far as saying he was a Protestant of sorts, in some sense. But I mean, that's I would say pushing it to say the least. But to kind of explain on Stephanos is that he was a monk, a very spiritual monk, a learned man. He was a copyist. He was somebody who would write the Bible and other church documents in Ge'ez. He became a monk in Aune Tekla Haymanot monastery in Shara. It's a place called Koyetz Tekla Haymanot. So being a monk there, it was extremely spiritual and it was very influential amongst the monks there, to the point where the abbot of the monastery started having problems with him. So he would preach, he would talk, like he would commit the monks to be more spiritual and less worldly, not to drink things like suwa and mis, and commit themselves to fasting, prayer, and prostration. So it got to the point where I guess the abbot could be viewed as being jealous of sorts, because he was becoming very influential, and he was even barred from certain spiritual practices like preaching and whatnot.
Wait,
Long story
it's because he was gaining popularity?
Yeah.
Well, he had some beliefs, didn't he, that were unpopular.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see that also later down the line. We're gonna get to it. Don't worry.
Is she?
Uh,
We're all waiting for the
so
tea. So
yeah. So he gets kind of like kicked out of the monastery, brought back and whatnot, and ultimately he was taught by this monk that came from Shoa, Auna Gebra Nazrawi. He has a monastery in Hausian area, a big monastery. It's something similar to like Devra Damo in the sense that you gotta climb by rope to get to it. Um, but yeah, so with Auna Stefanos, he goes around and he has this movement of people. So there's like this, you can call it a reformation of sorts, but not a reformation in belief, but in organization, right? Um, if you weren't somebody who was learned, you couldn't teach, and the priests were reduced to these people who would receive confession and administer the Holy Eucharist, meaning the body and blood of Christ, communion. And there was this kind of formation of mahabars. So the mahabar is basically you gather around for say Madhani Alam, and in commemoration of that person, like there would be a group. So they had their own mahabar. Now the controversy now with Auna Stephanos was later on down the line. There's Zara Yaqub, the same emperor we spoke about earlier, and Zara Yaqub, he was something of a, I mean, like, he was an educated person in the church, right? He was a monk before, or almost a monk before becoming emperor. He was somebody who stepped down from the monastery as a monk and then became emperor, right? So he delved in a lot of church matters. For example, with Eustatios, he settled the Sunday Sabbath and was in agreement with Eustatios. But with Stephanos, something I would say almost radical happened. The refusal to bow down to the emperor. Now, the reason why this was significant was because there was a practice of bowing down to the emperor's name, even if it was brought up.
oh wait.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
it
did we just?
yeah.
Oh
Uncle?
no. Oh, does he? Can you hear us? Technical difficulties, guys. So I'll just start talking until we can get him back. So what he's essentially saying is like, and he'll go more into more detail when he comes back, is that he rejected the idea of prostration to the emperor, which is a big deal politically, right? Because as he was about to say, that's a huge part of the culture. I didn't know that they had to prostrate before the emperor even when they said his name. So, and someone else just listed here, he had a list of 7 things that he rejected from the church. So I'll list them: rejection of prostration to religious icons, rejection of prostration to saints and angelic beings, rejection of prostration to the emperor Zara Yaqub, rejection of the claim of the Solomonic dynasty. So that's very interesting because he's also rejecting the central claim that allows the Shewan Dynasty to say they are the legitimate rulers of Ethiopia. Rejection of tabots, so the replicas of the Ark of the Covenant. Reorganization of church buildings from being sanctuary temples to assembly halls. And rejection of prayer to dead saints and angelic beings. So there's 2 interesting things going on there. Uncle, are you there yet? Nope. Okay.
Can you kick him? He can come back in. Damn, your Wi-Fi
Yeah.
is weird too.
Me? Oh no.
It's
Is there?
better now. It's better now.
Okay.
But yeah,
Let me
see
see
if you
if I can.
come back.
I'm gonna remove him. Okay, and then we're gonna re-invite Uncle. Let me just search. Are you allowed to do it, Febo, or is it just me?
Mm.
Doesn't matter. He's just, yeah, there you go.
Yes, Weddy 70. That's okay. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, how's your audio now, Uncle?
Okay, yeah, sorry. Was I cut off?
You were cut off. You were probably rambling about, you cut off
Oh
when you
man.
talked about him saying, sorry, you were saying that people even had to prostrate before the emperor when they said his name. So that's where you cut off.
Okay. Oh man. Okay, so I'll rewind way back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically with the bringing up of the emperor's name, the person would have to bow down. Now,
hmm
the Stephenites' position was, you know, bowing down is only for the Lord, meaning only for God. We don't bow down to people. We don't bow down to like the emperor. So out of refusing to bow down to the emperor is angry. He's crazed. Um, he has an issue now. Right. So, but the on the side of the emperor though, the accusation was that he's refusing to bow down to Saint Mary and the cross. So what happens is there's this kind of reenactment, right? Like in front of the priest. I mean, in front of the emperor. I think it's in front of the emperor, if I'm not mistaken. And they bring out three things: an icon of Saint Mary, the cross, and then a picture of the emperor. And then they accuse him of not being willing to bow down to the what's it called, to the icon and to the cross. But the Stephanites maintain that we refuse to bow down to the emperor because he's just a man. So there's this back and forth. You see writings into Amr Mariam, you see writings in the Stephanites' writings. Unfortunately, a lot of their writings were burnt. The accusation was that he refused to acknowledge things like tabots or icons and so on and so forth. But I mean, depending on which writings that you read, I mean, you'll get differing positions. So the Stephanites, the Stephanites, they have their own tradition of actual icons. If you go to the monastery of Gunda Gundo, which is found in Sa'azi Zaramba, just not too far outside of Eraga Hamus, south of Adgat, he has a monastery, and they have their own style of icons, which kind of shows like, well, wait, maybe his view on the icons is not the same as what the followers of Zara Yaqub are saying. There's the Amr Mariam as well, but there's differing, themes. So ultimately, the issue is about bowing down to the emperor. But on one side, of course, you see he refused to bow down to the icon of Saint Mary and to the cross. But the monks of the Stephanites don't necessarily agree with that.
Mm-hmm. So we see some. Go on, Fabu.
Well, I was just gonna ask. So when you say they were burned, who burned them?
The Stephanites.
Mm-hmm.
The followers of the emperor. They were persecuted. Ultimately, they were persecuted by the emperor, and they were being killed for a certain amount of, a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm. And so, I was saying, sorry, when you were gone, Uncle. Mm-hmm. There's two interesting things there. Mm-hmm. One is the political aspect that you mentioned, that he's mm-hmm. refusing to bow to the emperor. And mm-hmm. one of the 7 things that he claimed, I read them out earlier, is the rejection of mm-hmm. the claim of Solomonic dynasty, which is mm-hmm. essentially rejecting the legitimacy of him and his ancestors.
Yes.
So that's the political element. Mm-hmm. Another very interesting thing is that, in some way, like you said, we see the Decca and Estefanos and that those beliefs, they've carried on for some time. And there's a lot of similarity between the things he was saying and the Protestant Reformation in Europe. People have compared them. So for those of you who don't know, the Protestant Reformation in Europe was in roughly the 1500s. So at that point in time, if you were Christian, you were basically, there was like Catholic, Orthodox, and Oriental Orthodox, which is what we are. Basically 2. And Martin Luther, he put up, I forget how many of them. There's a bunch of
95 or 99,
95 or 99, something like that. He put them on a door, and that basically changed Christianity in the world forever, because all these different, sects of Christianity we know about that are not, Orthodox or Catholic are considered Protestant, mm-hmm. and, protesting against the church. So, Lutheran, Baptist, blah, 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 all those things. Mm-hmm. But a very interesting fact is that Martin Luther and his compatriots consulted with Ethiopian monks and priests while they were coming up with those demands. Mm-hmm. And so it's possible that on some level they may have been talking to people who were influenced by the Estefanos and his, the Stephanites. Mm-hmm. So that's a very interesting connection that exists there. So, a guy from Tigray who was thinking a little bit differently about the church and the way things are done, and an influence he may have had on Europe and possibly the world. Mm-hmm. Okay. So next up, we're shifting again like another 100 years to roughly the 1600s, which is a bit of a jump, but it's mostly because I want to get to someone interesting. Is there anything you want to say about the period roughly from the 1400s to the 1600s? Anything in Tigray that you think that's important, Uncle?
Um, I mean let me see here, 1400 to 1600.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Ethiopia proper, but like, is
Yeah,
anything in Tigray or anything in Ethiopia that affected Tigray?
yeah. I mean, there's obviously, different situations. Like for example, the no, yeah 1600s. I think that's the introduction of the Ottomans
Mm-hmm.
into Eritrea.
Yeah,
Um, oh my goodness. Thing is, I'm bad with the dates. Sometimes I kind of go
I
up and
know.
down.
For
But
me, the
for,
main
for
thing I can think of is the Portuguese.
okay, yes, the Portuguese come in the 1500s, don't they?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yes. So I guess I would say the issue with Ahmed Gran, the
Mm-hmm.
Ahmed Gran war, the at least the war with Ahmed Gran, that
Mm-hmm.
was probably one of well, I mean, the biggest situation to happen in Ethiopian in more recent Ethiopian history within the past 1,000 years,
Yeah.
devastating the country literally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, with that being said, I mean we see, for example, Amdet's going as far as I think Somaliland, maybe Zayla, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
If not Zayla, he's probably going to places like Harar and the such, extracting tribute. Like the two groups. So you have the Ifat Kingdom. I think it's called Ifat Kingdom, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the Ifat Kingdom is literally right beside the Abyssinian Kingdom. The Ifat is essentially the Afar, the Somali, the Oromo, uh, in the eastern side of the country. Now that being said, they had their own section. Harar was the capital, and they were the means in which trade would come into areas like Shoa. So anything coming to Shoa, the trade line would come from that area. That's this
Mm-hmm.
Djibouti slash Somaliland area. Trade though in Gondar ultimately would come from Eritrea. So another thing is like what I bring up to a lot of people, we can kind of see the diffusion of cultures. So starting from Eritrea, when we get to two places, Akaloguzai and Sarai, what makes them very different is that there's these two trade lines. Now, when we see this trade line from starting from Sarai to Arwa, to Aksum, Shara, Walkait, and Gondar, there's this culture that we see that's pretty similar. Uh, Jokes aside, I mean they're all known to be quite dry or dara'at zibhan, kufa'at zibhan. But people in say Akaluguzai, Agame, Enderta, Kalta, Al-Alo, Woro, Raya, ultimately ending in Wallo, represents another cluster of culture, right? Much more polite, soft spoken. You kind of see more, like for example, if I go to Maala, Goitawa, Kamelom, the Handiom, Ibad. It's more polite.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. My mom says it's like listless here.
listen, so even the
Wait,
dialect,
which areas did you say those were?
Akalogazai, which is the eastern half of Zowadowu in
Mm-hmm.
present-day Eritrea, Agame, or Zowa Mebra, which is obviously Kulta'ul Alo, Wu'uro. You get also Enderta, to some parts, of course, Tambien, Wajarat, Ndamukhoni, Ofla, Raya Azawo, Alamata, Kobo, ultimately ending in places like Wallo.
One sec, Uncle. For those of you who don't know all those locations,
Oh,
it's basically east side versus west side.
yeah.
That's what that's what it is.
Sorry. Yeah, so
Go on.
which represents this divide even within Tigray today. Not to say divide in a negative sense,
Mm.
but this cluster of culture which is
Yeah,
somewhat similar. Like Aru Aksum Shara, Saraya, and the Walkai generally have this dialect of Tigray that's ultimately similar. Um, if you go to like places like Agame, Enderta, Akaloguzai, Kilta Alo Woro, it represents another cluster or dialect, including of course Raya up to Raya. And they have their own development of things, which goes along with trade, because ultimately people intermingle because of trade. So it represents that kind of situation. But ultimately, why I bring this up is because with the Ahmed Grant situation, the point of connection is through this trade line, which ultimately is this Somaliland, like Red Sea area, going all the way to Showa. And the Abyssinian emperors would go and extract tribute. The issue with Ahmed Grant, to be honest, off the top, I don't remember. But it's something that leads to the destruction of the Abyssinian Empire at that moment, at least.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, you see, they call in the Portuguese, and they essentially come in. They have a huge effect because they came in with, like, guns that were modern at the time. They're like matchlock rifles.
Exactly.
And there's about 400 of them, and they had a devastating effect on the Adal Sultanate.
Yes.
And then we see the guy, the leader, was actually Cristóvão da Gama, who's the son of Vasco da Gama, one of the explorers who went to, I think, North America or South America. I don't remember my high school history. But there's a long history with the Portuguese in Ethiopia and them trying to convert the emperors and the people to Catholicism. And there's a lot of, they were almost successful, but eventually the group ended up mixing and settling in different parts of Tigray. And a little interesting fact is that the word for orange is a bastardization of the word Portugal, Bertucan. And we see that in different parts of the world, depending on who brought the orange, whether it was brought by, if it was brought by land, it's something like orange or aranchi. And if it was brought by sea, by the Portuguese, it's like Portugal, Bortucan. So you'll see in other countries, it's called Portugal. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why it's called Bortucan, because it was brought by the Portuguese. And at that period of time, we have a very interesting person who comes from Tigray, right? We have a gentleman from Tigray who was around during when the Portuguese were there, when they were influencing the emperor. The emperor had actually converted to Catholicism. His name is Zara Yaqub.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about the man Zara Yaqub?
Okay, so Zara Yaqub was obviously somebody who was from Oxford. And he grows up studying in the church. As he studies, he's told that he doesn't exactly have a voice for singing. So generally what happens in the traditional schools, there's two lines. You either go to become a mergeta, which is a chanter, and then you can also go and become a leek, which is somebody who studies books, like the New Testament, Old Testament, so on, philosophy, so on and so forth. So being told that he doesn't exactly have a voice, he's kind of basically told in a nice way, go to the other stream. So he goes to study the faith. So he studies, and he has certain views that may not be acceptable, and then goes to study with the Catholics. And mind you, he becomes a monk and all of that. So he goes, studies from both groups, and he develops his own theology. Meaning he doesn't exactly agree with either or groups for his own reasons that he states in his, I think, Hatata Zara Yaqub. But he still believes in God. But he refuses like this having to choose between one or the other. Sees that a lot of people are fighting, arguing, so on and so forth. So he kind of secludes himself and leaves the society. I believe the emperor called him once. I don't remember what happened. You may be able to fill in the blanks for me. But he was called, and I guess he gave a rebuttal for something, and then left to Goja. And so leaving to Goja, he's hired by this family, I think a better off family, to teach their son how to read and write. So he teaches their son. The son, I believe, is named Walde Hiwat, and ultimately Walde Hiwat becomes the disciple of Zara Yaqub. But yeah, you can probably give a better.
No, that's a great background. And the interesting thing is, I think at some point he goes to like a cave, and like he becomes like a hermit for a bit.
Yes.
And then when he goes to be what? Yeah.
No, I remember. I completely all section just remembered, but I just remembered. Continue.
And then there's also a point where like he like you said, he goes to teach the guy Walde Hiwat, and I think he writes a very famous treatise called, what is it? Hatita? Yeah. I encourage everyone here to go read it. You can find it online. It's in English and Amharic and Ge'ez. And it's not long. It's like 5-6 pages. But he goes through his whole life and, all the
But
things
what's
he
it called,
experienced.
Danny?
Sorry, what's that?
Like, tell them what to search, what to find.
Sorry, the person just put it right there. Atakasta just put it, Hateta. So the Hateta, just Google Hateta Zera Yaakov, right? So you Google that, you'll find it. It's not long. It's like 4 to 6 pages, I think. But the really cool part is when he starts talking about his philosophy that's very, very different from church. So, like, he doesn't really believe in the Christian God. He just believes in God, like this being that's called God. Exactly. Thank you, Fabu. And he goes into different philosophical concepts. I'm not going to go into all of them, but what's very interesting is like he's really just sitting down, reasoning, and trying to develop a different form of philosophy. And a lot of the stuff he comes up with is like 100 years ahead of what Europeans came up with. So a lot of people compare him to Rousseau. So, yeah, Uncle, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just like what you said about him being a hermit, he kind of said like this is not great or good for anybody, so he leaves the hermetic life for the
Wait,
married life.
he said being a hermit was not good for anybody, so he went back to regular life?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was part of like his philosophy. He said,
yeah.
if you read what he says like God made us to live, so being a
Mhm.
hermit doesn't make sense. So I should live amongst people.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there was some controversy around, because Catholics said priests can't marry, right?
Yeah.
And at that point in time, the emperor was a Catholic. And he
Mhm.
said, God made men and women so that they can get married and have children, so that doesn't make sense. He wouldn't put us on this earth, whether we're priests or not, to not have kids. So this doesn't
Mhm.
so he would just sort of like say, if God made this for us, then clearly it's something we should be using. So there's a kind of philosophy there. I'm not super into philosophy, but I encourage you to read it because it's very interesting to see the way he was thinking. And that's why I'm trying to bring up today. I don't remember the name of the first guy. It was Can you give it, Uncle? What is it? It
Which
was Tateotis?
oh,
The first dude.
Eostatos.
Okay, that
Eostatos.
guy. Abba Estefanos, who refused to bow. I think someone's asking. Zera Yaakov. So we see this core of Tigrayans within the church thinking differently, and I mean, most of them are, heretical. I think technically,
No,
Uncle. I'm not sure.
Eostatos is tzaddik,
Okay.
officially by the
Hmm.
church. Like with Auna Stefanos, there's a tablet in his name. There's a church in his name.
Hmm.
So of course, depending on who you ask, he may be a heretic or a saint in the church, but ultimately in Tigray, he's a saint. He's
Yeah.
counted as a
Okay.
saint. Yeah.
Okay. But the most important thing, either way, is that like you see these people operating in the church from Tigray who are thinking in a very, very unique way and having important effects on Tigray with the way they're thinking and possibly even the world. Someone just asked Danny Tekla, can we claim that he's in fact the first Enlightenment philosopher coming before the Europeans? You could say that, and you wouldn't be the first one. I've seen other people who've started exploring philosophy outside of Europe mention Zara Yacob and say that he could be considered the first Enlightenment philosopher. So yes. Um, okay. So do we have any comments, Uncle? Any comments? Anything you want to say before we move on to the question and answer period?
Ultimately, yeah, no, that would be pretty much it. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
that works.
Okay, Fabu, do you have any questions? Are there any questions in the question box?
Okay, so well, one guy had asked what was the name of the one who wouldn't bow down, but I think Uncle put it in there, right? That's who that was.
No, no.
No,
What
no.
I wrote was prior to that, but just Eustathios that we spoke on. It's Abba Estefanos. There's a document written by Getachew Haile in
Hmm.
regards to the Stephanites. It's in English. I mean,
Hmm.
anybody that wants to read that, you can go on Amazon, or I don't know if it's on archive.com or academic.edu,
Hmm.
but it's definitely there.
Okay, so that's good. I don't know, Degu135 if you caught that, but it was Abba Estefanos.
Okay.
And by the way, Danny, I don't have access to the question box now. I think only you can see that.
Oh, only I do? Okay.
So
Oh, okay. It's not a question. I guess no one has any questions today. If you do put them in the question box, I think we only have like 10 minutes left. I have something I'm going to bring up. I think I bring up something like this every time, like weird superstitions and stuff. So one time I brought up Buddha. Another time I brought up, those invisible people. A lot of people were talking about that. They like that. This one I want to ask about, Uncle or Febu. Have you guys ever heard of like Zar?
Is this what we were talking about last time?
This is different.
Oh, okay. Then no,
Un- un- it's a similar name. Have you ever heard of that, Uncle?
I want to say yes, but I can't like I'm driving.
So the idea of Zod is like spirits that inhabit a person, usually women, and they go crazy and they claim that there's like it's somehow sometimes related to Zarti. Have you ever heard of anything like this, Uncle?
Yeah, it's like maybe it could be more than one. I think, and like they can
Hmm.
possess a person to.
Okay.
wait, what's the difference between that and a Buddha then if it possesses people?
I think Buddha is a condition that you're born with, or like
Hmm.
it's a state of being born into. So it's connected with a lot of like the handcrafts business and uh, evil eye, like having this evil eye where somebody can curse you just by looking at you, kind of thing. With the Zara, it's something I guess that I want, for lack of a better term, I would say the same as a Ghanaian. So Ghanaian
Like,
is kind of, yeah, it's like in Arabic they call it jinn. In English
okay.
we call it Ghanaian, and it's like demons essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I thought Buddha was. All right.
mhm.
Showit is telling us that Buddha is the evil eye and Zar is the evil spirit.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard stuff about it. I didn't know if it was a thing in Tigray. Degu knows what I'm talking about. Degu135 says yes, you shake your head and they ask for all kinds of things. I'm not sure how much of it a thing is in Tigray. That's why I wanted to ask people to see if anyone else knows.
Yeah, and today I don't think I've seen much of that, to be honest.
Sounds like there's a
Hmm.
lot in the last 2 weeks. Now I've heard of too many things. Zar, Buddha. What was the other one, Uncle?
The shadow people. Oh my goodness.
What?
The shadow people.
Yeah, but what was the
The sh-
Tigrinya word for it?
I
I think
forgot.
Zarti. That's what I heard.
Zarti. Okay,
That's what my
Zarti.
Zarti.
mom calls it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the other one was Dek Ihdarta.
Like Ihdarta, yeah.
There's a lot, guys. There's a lot of
Hmm.
spooky
Ooh.
stuff.
Hmm. Lots of interesting stuff. It's weird though, like the perception that people have of Africa and Christianity in Africa. Like people assume it's pagan or influenced by pagan stuff, but really, like honestly, Tigray is like at least Christianity in Tigray is very, very, very Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's very hard to find any superstition that's outside of our religion, if that makes sense. Compared to like if you look at Europe and you look at like Easter, like what's Easter today actually? The bunny with laying eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That is originally a Norse fertility goddess named Oster.
Oh
So
wow.
that's somehow that got co-opted onto European Christianity. Even stuff like Halloween, I think, is some Celtic Irish holiday that got co-opted. So that's a thing you see in Europe a lot, is where previous pagan beliefs sort of get copied and pasted on so that people can be more comfortable with Christianity. Whereas in Tigray, I guess they just straight up exterminated that stuff. So,
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Uncle, the last thing is
Mhm.
somebody's asking how long were you in Tigray to learn all this history?
I mean, I lived in Tigray for I think 2 years, and then every summer for 4 years.
Wow.
So I mean, 3 months times four. So I guess you call it 3 years, maybe. I don't know.
And how much of your learning about history came from reading on your own time, and how much of it came from being in Ethiopia?
A lot of it, I would say, probably maybe 60 to 70% was actually reading.
Mm-hmm.
30 to 40% was actually experiencing, and
Mm-hmm.
because I include reading, like, because I would read like the parchment books, I would read whatever I can get my hands on, um, and kind of even while I was in the college, like in seminary, we would have to read and kind of do like presentations and like reports on different historical things. So a lot of it has to do with reading
Mm-hmm.
drama. But ultimately, like being in Tigray, like I can say, like I went to Aksum I went to Adwa, I went to Shara, I went to Agana, I went to Tambian, I went to Raya, I went to Wadkai. Like these are places that I've been, places that I've witnessed, and it's a little different than just reading when you experience it with like the five senses.
Hmm.
So I would ultimately give majority of what I know to reading, but a large significant amount of it also comes from seeing and actually
Hmm.
experiencing.
Obviously, this question comes up every time. Do you
Hmm.
guys have book recommendations?
Uncle, what do you
I
got?
think by the next time, you guys need to create like a Google Doc of what you recommend.
Yeah, we got to have it prepared. I need to be ready next time. Mine mostly comes from just random stuff on the internet. Also, if you guys want to learn, academia.edu, Uncle already said it. It's just free, open. You don't really need an account.
Mm-hmm.
You can just type in Tigray or some sort of subject you like, and you'll get a bunch. You have to filter through it, but you can find cool articles there for free. Also, JSTOR, JSTOR. You have to make an account. You get 100 free articles a month, which is more than enough for most people. And put it in the stories. Okay, we'll try and put it in the stories. But yeah, that's for me. Uncle, what's your book recommendations?
Just on a very basic reading level, I would say first, anybody that would want to learn, I would say first get ancient and medieval history by Sergo Haile.
Mm-hmm.
It delves into like pre-Aksumite, like starting from like the land of Punt all the way up to the Zagwe dynasty. Kind of gives a breakdown on a lot of the positions. So, for example, Naura Id, Rishur Usan, Patriarch, Ichege, Akabits, and a lot of these titles that were there at the earlier period. Another book would be Layers of Time by Paul B. Hans. Church and State by Tadessa Tamrat, I think is his name. Um, let me see. There's a lot more. This is just off the top that I can think of. Hagar Erlich also has an array of books that are very interesting. Hagar Erlich, Zaure Gebre Selassie for Atz Yohannes. Um, but yeah, I'll definitely read a more systematic list of books.
All right.
Natalie, a good question for you guys. She said, "Are these articles and books by Tagaru authors? And do you have any concerns about sources from Europeans telling our narrative?"
Okay. Personally, I've found stuff written by Europeans to be more neutral and less biased than stuff written by Ethiopians. So, when you get stuff with Ethiopians, you can get some very, very interesting biases in them, especially non-Tagaro Ethiopians. Um, that is a good point, though, that this is like a real gap in our people, both in the diaspora and at home, to be honest, where our people really don't know our history. So, we really need to make sure there's more Tagaro historians in the future, however that happens. So, yeah, Uncle, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. But the only issue I have with European authors is that a lot of the underlying points, histories, you name it, basically kind of gets tossed to the side only because they may not know it, they may not find it important, so on and so forth. But there's a lot of things that we may get from, say, word of mouth. But the problem with word of mouth, obviously, is how can you verify it? It's like a story that was passed on from somebody, from somebody. It's like broken telephone, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many things that they kind of leave out or may not know that kind of just gets lost. So like with say for example, the Zaman Masafint, there's only limited information that we know of. And even from the European perspective, so for example, say James Bruce, even him and of himself
Sorry, I got
are
to
very
interrupt you. We
problematic.
got
Yeah.
25 seconds left.
Okay, sorry. But yeah, no, I
Go,
was
go
just gonna
on.
say like,
Mhm.
so somebody comes after that, and then we see what they write, and it seems that James Bruce, his writing seems to be problematic and inaccurate. So it's even them themselves. It's a big if. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is what it
Okay.
is. Though.
Last thing, if anybody's interested, Danny has Tigray basically articles